So one of the things that I like to do is talk to my colleagues who are on the business side. What are the nonprofits that you refer our patients to? I'd like to know who really is part of this village and make sure we're investing in them.
Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vella-Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vella-Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vella-Williamson. This season, our focus is on practicing social responsibility. Today, I'm joined by Brittany Pratt. Brittany Pratt is the Vice President of Social Responsibility at WellMed Medical Management, responsible for overseeing community relations, philanthropy, and volunteerism for the company in Texas, Florida, and New Mexico. She has been with WellMed for 5 years and leads a team towards 2 blue-chip goals: making WellMed the best place to work and positioning the company as a responsible corporate citizen wherever it operates. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So glad you're here. Tell us a little bit more about your background and your current role.
Sure. As you said, I've been here with WellMed for about 5 years. Prior to coming to WellMed, I actually was a fundraiser for a public university here in San Antonio, the University of Texas at San Antonio. So for about 8 years there, I was part of a team to help raise money to support scholarships and research at the university, which was a lot of fun. And then prior to that, I worked for a couple of smaller nonprofits, the Children's Shelter of San Antonio and Girls Inc. of San Antonio. And that's really kind of where my career in fundraising, nonprofit, social responsibility, although I did not call it that at the time, sort of began. I'm from San Antonio. Very proud to say the first in my family to graduate from college. You and I know each other, of course, from UTSA. I earned my bachelor's degree at UTSA in public relations and went back for my master's degree in interpersonal communication. And I'm so glad that I did that. I'm sure you feel the same way. I just think it's been so helpful. I still quote theories that we learned in grad school, and my friends roll their eyes at me.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things I always say that things like theories, they get in my bones and then I just know them and I do them. But I always have to look back at everything in the textbook, which kind of leads me into my next question, which is really about the terminology and defining social responsibility. So, like you said, I feel like those terms have really come to light and elevated in the last few years, particularly over the last pandemic year. But I do know that professional associations and organizations define social responsibility a little differently. So how do you define it? Maybe, as Brittany, and then how do you define it at WellMed?
Sure. And you're right. I think whenever I engage in with my colleagues that maybe even in companies in other industries, right, they define it in different ways. I've seen some companies define it more on the environmental sustainability side, right? What are we doing to save the planet, which is a wonderful cause. But at WellMed, it's more about, as you mentioned earlier, making an impact in our communities. But for me personally, I think I've been in this industry my whole career. I just didn't know it. And it wasn't until I came to WellMed that all the puzzle pieces kind of came together for me. And it was this aha moment where I really feel like all the experiences I've had have been a stepstone up to this. And I think one of the skills that I am able to bring to the table is, to borrow from your 360-degree viewpoint, it is that different perspective, right? The all-around perspective, because I've been the fundraiser for the nonprofit who's out there looking for someone to connect to our mission. And in that space where it's almost desperation, right? If I don't get this funding, this program is not going to happen.
Mm.
And I've been on that side, so I know I have an idea of how nonprofits depend on the community to make their mission possible. And from there, my experience at UTSA taught me from an individual perspective, not so much so from the corporation perspective, but from an individual perspective, what it takes to work with someone on a personal level who might want to invest in what you do. And then bringing all of that to an interesting hybrid in this corporate environment where I am involved in a nonprofit that is the partner to the company, and we do a little bit of both, right? I'm on the other side where I have the pleasure of being a funder now to the nonprofits. So I definitely empathize and have a ton of compassion for what they do and how it works. And then from the individual side, my team asks our employees to donate from their paychecks. So we do need to know how, as I say jokingly, to extract the dollars and multiply those so that we can connect all the dots and be part of this village that lifts up the population we're trying to impact. So that's kind of how I see it personally. At WellMed, as a business, our focus really is older adults, the older adult population, seniors, elderly, lots of different words to describe this segment of the population. But it's really where we work best. At that age, sometimes you have some chronic health issues that you need to keep under control. And other times it's not. And it's just about prevention. And in our doctor's offices every day, we want to help you live your best, of course. But we realize outside of the clinic, there's a whole, like I said, village of nonprofits in the community that want to help you. We have the food bank, we have the Meals on Wheels program, we have Texas Ramp Project, all these folks all over Texas and Florida that will help meet the needs that we can't necessarily in a medical environment, but we realize still contribute to your health. So that's where I think our social responsibility viewpoint comes into focus for WellMed. What can we do for the community that is beyond what we do for you in the clinic? And we really focus on older adults. It's a space that we feel we can and we are making an impact. I remember two statistics I like to share with our employees when I ask them to invest in our foundation. And that is that only 2% of charitable giving in the US supports seniors and caregivers. And only 6% of nonprofits in our country focus on aging. So right there sets the scene for why the WellMed Charitable Foundation would even exist and why we would choose to focus on older adults.
I love that focus and diving deeper into that niche. It is such an important part of our population, and more respect, I think, needs to be given to us as we age and those that age around us, and then the caregivers and
Sure.
the roles that they play.
Right.
What I also hear you saying is that offering of wraparound services and meeting people where they actually are. They can't take care of their healthcare concerns
Yep.
if they have other, hierarchical needs that are in the way of getting to that doctor's appointment or in the
Right.
way of taking those medicines, of even, purchasing those medicines. So that's really important that you think about that holistically. And I also agree with social responsibility being
Yeah.
more of that like umbrella or the culmination of all these good things. And I love how you see it that way. So fabulous.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll just add that
Hmm.
so when the WellMed Charitable Foundation started 14 years ago, there was a focus on direct services. What can we provide directly to older adults to help them really take charge of their health? And it has become really the cornerstone of how we give back as a company, and that is our senior centers. We operate 11 senior centers in Texas and Florida. There is no cost to the member, the older adult who wants to become active, and you also do not have to be our patient. We don't want that to be a boundary. Of course, we'd love you to be our patient because we kind of think we know what we're doing and we'd like to take care of you. But the goal is to eliminate the barriers to access, right? And these centers are meant to be places where an individual can become physically active, mentally stimulated. They can come for a meal, they can come for friendship and fellowship, and that is part of taking care of your health. Of course, we all know that. But one of my favorite stories in the senior centers was I was walking in for a meeting and I befriended this gal named Josephine. And I said, "Where are you off to?" She said, "I'm late for Zumba. I'm sorry, no time to chat. I gotta go." And
Out of the way.
she slammed the locker closed and she walked away. And this another member came up to me and said, "That's Josie. She's 90 years old." And I just thought, oh, wow, I just love it. I love that I'm here and Josie is off putting me to shame. It was like 8 a.m. going to Zumba. I love it.
Yeah, I have a whole list of goals for when I age, and definitely it sounds like your centers would be a place I would go and enjoy
Yes.
myself.
Yep.
And let's talk about access. I just want to say how impressed and really grateful I've been to WellMed over the pandemic. When you all put up the centers as an offering to the community, as a place to call in and use a phone bank to make an appointment and get the COVID vaccine, I just felt like that was so innovative and simplistic. And that's exactly what our seniors needed. That's exactly what everyone battling with the digital divide in our community needed. And quite frankly, it was so helpful in terms of user friendliness. Now, I know that some people complain that, oh, I can't get through the phone lines, but I'll
Sure.
tell you, I personally helped about 23 or 4 people get through those phone lines.
Oh, I love to hear that. I love that.
Yeah, it was totally possible.
You know, that was a ride it was on a Friday at 1 o'clock. I got a text from my boss saying, "I need you at one of our senior centers in an hour." Okay.
Mm.
And we were all working from home at this point, so we're like, "Wait, what? Oh, in person? Excuse me? What do I wear?"
And always on a Friday.
Yes, on a Friday. So I show up and there's about 75 people in the center, which is 10 times more than a group size I've seen over the past 6 months.
Right.
And I thought, "Oh no, what have I walked into?" And that's when our senior vice president of clinic operation, Jimmy Keenan, announced, "The city needs us and we are going to respond. And Monday we shall open a vaccine clinic and I need all of your help to make it happen. I don't know how long we're going to do it." Well, she said, "I know how long we're going to do it. We're going to do it for as long as they need us. But we're opening for business on Monday, so we need a plan and go."
Incredible.
And boy, I mean, I think everyone involved in that project would agree it is just a highlight of our professional career. It was absolutely a labor of love. It was not easy, but it was the most meaningful thing
Mhm.
to be a part of, to be able to do that for my hometown. I'm going to try my best not to get emotional. There were so many people that walked in just grateful to have this opportunity, grateful that they got through. Like you said, there were some challenges. It was just a demand issue, really, and a supply issue. Just people just breaking down because they were so grateful and happy
Sure.
to get the vaccine and that it was in their community and that because they're so worried. Most of the time it's about the person they're bringing, not even about themselves. They're
Mm.
worried about their husband or their grandma or their mom. It was truly something life-saving for them in their eyes. And we just added up those numbers earlier this week, and WellMed was responsible for over 200,000 of the vaccines in San Antonio.
It's incredible.
And my team, we staffed sometimes we had 3 vaccine sites with 50 volunteers every day. And it's all we did for about 4 months. So we definitely had to redefine what our job role was for a good amount of time. But I just kept telling my team, what better thing to do right now? This is the best thing for us to do right now. And it is just, like I said, it's definitely a highlight of my career. I'll never forget it. And I tell the people that I met, that I'll never forget you because of this is just extremely meaningful.
Yeah, I think when you're in the trenches like that, it just has that lasting impact. And I what a beautiful illustration of doing good and meeting people in their reality and focusing on what was important right now. And I love that you say that, because I've noticed myself championing those terms over this last year, even in 2021, is let's focus on what matters now.
Right.
Because as we re-enter our world, there's a push to just go back to where we were. And there's so many great lessons we've learned about how to do better as a society that it's important to focus on what matters now. And, on that note, a lot of organizations have had the chance to analyze and kind of audit their practices and behaviors and thought about, particularly with social unrest happening, where they are on this spectrum of social responsibility. But for organizations who've never really stepped into this space, are there any fundamentals in your opinions that they can consider to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think first you need to have a philosophical conversation with yourself. And it probably should start at the top, right? Even if you're a small business, right? My mom and my dad are both small business owners, and they do give back to the community, and they have their own personal interests. And sometimes the social responsibility focus starts there because there's the leader of the company might have something that they're very passionate about, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But nonetheless, you do need to have a conversation about what is the impact, where do we want to focus? And for WellMed, it made sense for older adults because that's what we do as a business. So one of the things that I like to do is talk to my colleagues who are on the business side. What are the nonprofits that you refer our patients to? I'd like to know who really is part of this village and make sure we're investing in them, because if they don't have funding, then our patients don't get that support. And if our patients don't get that support, then I know that other seniors are not as well. So you could think about talking to your team about their own interactions with the external community. Maybe there are relationships that are already there that you don't know about. There's a lot of teams, we have over 10,000 employees, so there's no way for me to know what every clinic is up to. So I might travel to one of our markets and realize, oh, this clinic has a really good relationship with X, with this charity. Well, let's present a donation to them. So I think doing the research and knowing where the organic relationships are is a great place to start. And then I think being transparent is important as well. One of the things that I've learned is, well, I knew this from fundraising in the past, but I think even more so when we're asking employees to contribute from their own paycheck, I really encourage my team to talk as much as they can about where that money goes, right? We are using those dollars to make an impact in your neighborhood, in your community. And we try and quantify that in meaningful ways so that employees do know that their investment matters and that it's not just going to come to a massive effort here at headquarters, right? Because if you're one of our employees in Miami, that's not really going to turn you on at all. And that's not what I want to do. I want to make a difference for you in Miami. So I would suggest that's a good place to start, is where are those natural charitable relationships that might already exist? And if there aren't, then think about your customer base and what's that village look like? And I think you'll find once you put that plan in place, people will be willing to help.
Yeah, I also advocate very highly for looking for that natural alignment, like you were talking about. Like, what are your brand pillars as an organization?
Hmm.
What is your focus in your target audience? Can you help that group of people in a meaningful way? I hear a lot lately, even in travel and tourism, people are looking for, as they travel, meaningful experiences, meaningful vacations. They do want to help. And so, this idea of purpose and remaining purpose driven and thoughtful is going to be important, I think. And like you said, with employees, is thinking about their realities. And in some ways, what I noticed when I was inside of a corporation was that sometimes I had to advocate internally to give them agency so that they could help. What I found, and I wonder if you found this too, is that some of the best volunteers and those who gave often to organizations like the United Way were hourly employees, those who have maybe benefited from some kind of services or had family members or friends that have been impacted.
Hmm.
And I think we all, because of the pandemic, have maybe a little closer of experience of needing support and having received help, it opened my eyes to see that. And like, wow, some of my best volunteers. But the challenge they had was getting the time off to volunteer.
Right.
And so I found a way to build a business case for giving them some paid time to volunteer as a company so that they weren't in an awkward position financially or with their supervisors trying to get that time off. So that's a great idea too.
Right. Yes. And that can be difficult to sell, but you're right. If you put the right case together, I'll get down into the weeds here for a second. We are majority owned by a larger organization called United Health Group. So, in terms of HR, some of our policies are a little limited, but I definitely have been a champion of volunteer time off since I got here. And it's so hard for someone who works in a clinic,
Right.
right? Every day, you can't just decide the clinic's going to close one day and go work at the food bank. That would be bad business sense because those patients need to be seen. So we do have our own challenges trying to make all of it work. But thankfully, in our central departments, we have a lot of executive leaders who are very passionate about giving back, and they do organize those days of service for their employees. We have our IT department who fundraises every month for our WellMed Charitable Foundation, and they are one of the biggest supporters of ours. I try and make sure that that group knows, hey, here's how much you raised, and that's impressive, and here's where it's going to go, kind of thing. And that obviously contributes to the blue chips that we mentioned earlier. I want to make sure employees just we can't be in charge of the whole experience, but we can definitely contribute to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, from the external side, when we think about our communities, what type of initiatives do you think are really making a positive social impact now? And has there been any big shifts because of the pandemic?
You know, what I have observed over the last 5 years in terms of fundraising, and I'm curious if you or your clients have experienced the same thing. I think people are less attracted to operations funding, and more attracted to project-based funding or something very specific, right? Like we're raising money to put AC units in the home of a senior. That's very specific, tangible, and finding the price point or the donor point that seems attainable and realistic. So one of the successes we had over the pandemic was we really decided, well, thankfully we had decided even before the pandemic hit that we were going to fundraise all year long for food insecurity. Little did we know that a pandemic was going to hit and food insecurity was just going to blow up. It was one of the biggest challenges for our community here. The food banks, the Meals on Wheels programs were being demanded on like never before. Not only that, people who normally don't rely on those charities are suddenly coming to them because the grocery stores don't have food or the older adults are terrified to leave their homes. It just became this huge issue. And what my team tried to do was translate that into, all right, you want to help? Of course we all want to help. Let's say a week of groceries costs $100. Luckily, at our foundation, WellMed matches every dollar an employee contributes, and so does our parent company. So everything my team is able to raise is tripled. So we divide whatever we need. The goal is in three. So we'd send a note out to our employees. You give us $30, we'll turn that into 90. That's a week of groceries for a senior. And we set up a grocery delivery program, and we were taking referrals from all of our markets. Our employees were volunteering. We went on to Instacart, wherever we needed to go, Amazon. It was difficult in the beginning. We even set up our own food pantries with whatever food we could get. We used that money to get the food out to people directly. And I think those kinds of programs that are almost grassroots, a focus that everybody can understand, and a price point that people can afford to support is just like the trifecta of success, I think. And for us, this program we started, WellMed Delivers, was so helpful. I mean, that was another very meaningful thing that my team will always cherish. I think the ultimate compliment was the president of our Houston market said, this program is no longer pandemic related. It is an essential business function.
Wow.
This is what our seniors need. They need food. they're going to run out in 24 hours. And there wasn't a program that we could find that was able to do that, at least in the pandemic. The food bank, of course, and Meals on Wheels are all important. We just aimed to be another tool in that toolbox. So I think the pandemic has taught us that we can do this. We just have to eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah, and be willing to talk about the elephant and team up
Right.
together to tackle that problem. And I loved personally just seeing all the red tape fall to the floor when
Yep.
when the pandemic hit. It's like, okay, yes, let's finally talk to each other. Yes, let's work together. Yes, let's face the reality of what's essential in our area and what's needed. And I truly hope that collaboration stays with us and people like you can help continue to champion it and move it forward.
Hmm.
We've talked about a lot of great things and you're a wealth of stories, but what has this focus on social responsibility taught you as a professional or as a person?
Oh man. So as a professional, I constantly remind my team, and it's a reminder to myself as well, that we can never get it all done. We just can't. And it can feel so consuming to think of all the needs and requests that are coming at us. We can't say yes to everything, but that is also a reminder that there's always some way we can help. So it turning that seemingly negative into a positive. And I just tell the team, we got to do what we can and build on those successes, right? Sometimes we get so caught in the minutia of an activity. For example, we will plan this activity for our employees. This is pre-pandemic. We had a school supply drive supporting grandparents raising grandchildren. And on the lunch break, we set up in all the corporate buildings an opportunity for employees to go through a conference room, assemble a backpack with supplies, and then we delivered them to Boys and Girls Clubs. Well, the team across the corporate campuses got a little nervous that we wouldn't have enough pencils or we wouldn't have enough markers. Everybody needs to have the same thing. I was like, guys, you're getting in your own way. Any supplies in this bag are going to be helpful. I don't want you to think about pencils. This is still a success, right? If one bag has pencils, the other bag has mechanical pencils, the other one has pens, it's okay. There is still impact being made. I don't want us to cause each other stress trying to make it perfect, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up also raising on top of that $10,000 to present to the Boys and Girls Club. That was one of our best successes. So I think I have to be the goalkeeper for the team sometimes and just remind them, hey, we don't have to do all the good. We can't. We will run out of money and time before we are able to do all the good. But we are doing some good. So you need to give yourself that pass because I think it's just so overwhelming. You want to do everything for whatever project is ahead of you. And it's great. But that's also one of the biggest challenges we have for WellMed is honing that great sense of motivation and excitement to help. The other thing I would say I've learned is how to better manage the emotional toll that it can sometimes take on you. We have responded to a lot of crises in my office. So we have hurricanes in our markets. We lost patients and employees in the Pulse shooting in Orlando, the El Paso shooting at the Walmart, the Sutherland Springs shooting. We've lost a lot, and every time I'll get an email, it could be from an executive, it could be from a colleague in that market saying, "What are we going to do? How can we help?" And every single time our employees respond, we ended up presenting the city of El
Mhm.
Paso with $750,000 after that shooting. Every single time our employees respond. But at some point, my team becomes the center of that, and we hear the stories of the loss because we have to tell the stories of the loss. We're also a part of giving the money out, so we learn the stories of the lives that it's about to impact, and it becomes very heavy sometimes when you think about what these people go through. And sometimes I just have to close my door and get a cry out. Really, honestly, I've done that because I just can't believe what these people are going through. sometimes, and you think about how it affects your own life and
Yeah.
how it affects your colleagues, people that I know that work in other markets who lost the loved one, and you just have to process it and give it the space that it deserves, and then get back up and know that this is, at the end of it all, it's something really good that you're doing. You're just in it right now with with your colleagues and with your fellow humans.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that those who work in social responsibility, or those who, gosh, even when I was in diversity and inclusion and equity, there are some roles, or in house at a nonprofit, it just never seemed to be enough.
Right,
And I had to get to a point where I understood, like, just do your best,
right.
right? Every day, move that needle, push the ball, make a relationship. But we're not going to solve a societal problem, like, probably on my watch. I had to come to terms with that. But I can make things better, and I can influence and inspire people to try their best too. So I think that's probably how communication professionals as individuals, no matter where you sit, can support these type of efforts.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
I'll just say personally, I think what I've tried to share with my daughters is we all have our own personal networks that we can engage when we want to do something. So what I've tried, they're a lot more willing to do it now, is I've introduced the idea for their birthdays, you're going to gather your friends, right? Do you really need all those toys? Because you're going to get toys from or things, right? From your parents, from your grandparents. My kids are lucky enough to have all the things. But if you had 20 little girls coming over, what if we each asked them to bring some puppy food, right? That's accessing your personal network
Mm.
to do something good. And at first they were like, I don't know about this. What do you mean? I'm going to get 20 less presents? But I mean, to me, that's important to teach my children. You don't really need that. I think you're just sold on this whole birthday idea, but this is a powerful opportunity to utilize the network that you have, even as an 8-year-old, to do something for someone else. And I want them to have empathy and understanding, and I want them to be knowledgeable of what they have, what they don't have, and how they can help. Everybody needs help at different times. You know what I mean? Everybody.
Absolutely.
So I'm personally proud that I think I've learned the power of engaging the networks at work, right? To put all this together, I just looked internally and thought, oh, we could do this at home. I did it for my birthday during the pandemic. Just instead of presents, I asked everybody to bring some kind of toiletry, and we sat there in the living room and put together kits, and we delivered them for my birthday. It's like, you know what? I don't need anything. So I think that is the most powerful lesson that I've learned personally from working in social responsibility.
Beautiful. That's very special that you're teaching your daughters that, and that you're showing your community that too. I love that, Brittany. Well, I like to ask everyone, because I'm intrigued with this concept of smart talk. What does smart talk mean to you, Brittany?
You know what? I'm gonna confess that I wrote out all of my answers to some questions because that's me. I'm a Virgo. But this one I kept bouncing around because I was like, smart talk, smart talk. What does that mean, smart talk? So I just wrote down words. I wrote authenticity, compassion, empathy, and honesty. At first my initial thought was, well, smart talk is, informed discussion. It's like, no, 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 no. What's more meaningful to me is feeling confident about who you are and being honest about where you are. And I really try and encourage my team, if you feel overwhelmed, if you're coming to work and your to-do list is so long you don't know where to start, call me and let's talk about it. And I think that's smart. That's smart talk right there, is figuring out how best to manage your time,
Yeah,
because you don't have to sit there and fester. We're all a team, and that's what I'm here for, is to help you, because there's so much to do and there's not enough time. So I finally got rid of the expectation that I would cross off everything in my to-do list every day. I make a week list instead, and I work on it all week, and I might add and move something to next week as the week progresses. But I do think the smart talk comes from talking from where you are and who you are. That's what it means to me.
Absolutely. All that. Well, this has been such a fun conversation, and you and I just connect on many, many levels, but I think that our listeners would love to find a way to connect with you too. So what's the best way for our listeners to follow you or connect with you?
Well, we do have an Instagram handle, the WellMed Charitable Foundation does. It's at WellMed Gives. So that would be a good opportunity to just start following us and what we're up to. If you want to get a hold of me, we also have an email address. It's WellMedGives. So that's WellMedGives, WellMedGives at wellmed.net.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brittany, so much for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. If you like this conversation, check out my blog article, 4 Steps for Practicing Social Responsibility, at mvw360.com. And if it's been a while, click over to the PR Pro Gear shop to see the new designs and products launched just for this season. Marketing professionals and content creators, we've made some goodies just for you. Check out prgearshop.com for promo gear designed by industry pros for industry pros. And as always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.